Joshua Lazoya says, don't we need some sensible gun control laws? We don't want people walking around with automatic weapons or driving around in tanks. Says who? What is a sensible gun control law? Why do we have to have them? And why do we need all of these things? So let's just look at this from a starting point of view. If we need gun control laws because people die from gun violence, then we need food control laws because people die of obesity. We need drunk driving laws because people die of drunk driving accidents. We need all kinds of dietary control laws to limit heart disease. We need anti-smoking laws because people die of smoking. We need laws to ban knives because knives kill more people than assault rifles, and clubs do too. We need to limit people's access to the outdoors because people drown or people are killed by wildlife or people die of starvation or people die of exposure when they get lost out on the trails. We need to put safety helmets on everyone, and we need to rope off every large body of water, and we need to have everything absolutely constricted and controlled because people can get hurt out there. So if you're just going to make the case that we have to punish people who are not committing crimes because other people who do commit crimes have consequences, then the only answer is to keep everybody in the basement, which is what they really want. They want everybody controlled, managed, on pre-approved trails with safety helmets and all the rest of it. So sensible gun control laws. What are sensible gun control laws? Well, a sensible gun control law might be if a person has committed a felony and is shown through his actions that he's not capable of functioning in society and has no restraints on his behavior, maybe we shouldn't let that person own a gun. Oh, wait, that's already a law, isn't it? I think it is, as a matter of fact. I think it is a law that says that if you show through your actions that you cannot be trusted as a member of society, maybe we shouldn't let you have guns. That law exists already. Who knew? Who knew? That's a sensible gun control law. As far as people driving around in tanks goes, there's, believe it or not, a fair number of Americans own tanks. A lot of people don't know how many guys own tanks. I bet there's scores, if not hundreds of them out there. I think I've seen one case where a guy went on a rampage in a tank. I don't think it was the guy that owned the tank. So is this really a problem that we're going to have? Or is this just more hyperbole designed to get people to shut up? Do we really, if we say we don't want controls on our handguns, this is really going to lead to a epidemic of people driving in tanks? And I'll go further than that. If your government is determined to come after you with tanks, and as we see the police being more and more militarized, if the government's coming after you with tanks, then I am 100% in favor of private tank ownership for citizens. 100%. So this business about, what does that mean everybody should be able to drive a tank? I never really thought about driving a tank before, but if the government is going to be armored up with tanks, and they're going to use tanks not against enemy soldiers, but against American citizens, then I think every American should have a right to keep and bear tanks. I want to be able to defend myself, not just against a guy with a switchblade, but against anybody that's coming to harm me or my family. So, yeah, I'd open carry a tank if that's what we're going to have to be looking at. Look, you know, this is why we're having this discussion in the first place. The ownership of weapons does two things. It protects your life against criminals, and there's no question that's the case. And it also makes the tyrants who desire to tell other people what to do and who always go into government to control other people's lives because they have a genetic defect. There's something wrong with them. They're not happy unless they're telling other people what to do. It's not like they want to live this way. It's not like they want to live with, you know, a low carbon footprint, recyclable future. That's fine. They can do whatever they want to. But they have to make other people do it too. And they have to make them wear the helmets. And they have to make them limit their sodas. And they can't be fat. And they can't smoke, can't do anything that they don't want them to do. Those people have a problem. They're genetic defects. They've got a severe mental illness in terms of telling other people what to do. I don't mind that those people are out there as long as they mind their own business, but they don't. So if these people come at us with guns to try to get us to do what they want us to, we should have guns to defend ourselves against them. If they come at us with tanks, then we ought to start thinking about getting some tanks. If they decide to use nuclear weapons on the American people, then American people should have nuclear weapons to defend themselves against their government. It sounds silly, but it's not silly at all. Let me tell you something, folks, about this gun control issue. You really need to read about the Soviet Union, how it was formed, and what it did to its own people. I have never been more horrified in my life. The Nazis don't do this to me. When you look at the randomness, at the ease where people in that thing could say, that is not a true Bolshevik. That guy is counter-revolutionary. And not just him, his children, his wife, his grandparents, every single one of them, down in the basement of the Lubyanka, shot in the back of the head. That is the one thing in the world to fear, because who do you call if your government has come to kill you? Who do you call if the government's coming to kill you? And liberals look at this and go say, that could never happen in America. How could you? What do you mean it could never happen in America? What makes you say that it could never happen in America? We're made out of the same stuff as anybody else. It's true that we have an attitude about this, but that's the attitude that's keeping us afloat. So you have to be able to look. You can actually really reduce it to something even simpler than that. I don't want tanks. I don't want to have to own a tank so that I can fight my government that owns a tank. If I have to own a tank to convince the government that it ain't going to happen, that they don't have a chance, then that's the win. We have to be able to protect ourselves against the idea that they can get away with it here. And so the more armored up we are and the more ammoed up we are, the better our chances of it not happening. You ask any liberal who has an opinion about guns should not be allowed. Really? No. You shouldn't carry a gun then for yourself? I would never carry a gun. You can occasionally even find people who will say, I'd rather die than carry a gun. And that's all fine until you find them in an alley. Because when they're in an alley, when they're being raped, when they're being murdered, it's not a cocktail party discussion then. And you ask somebody, some giant liberal, because this happens every day in this country, you ask one of these liberal feminists who got a thing about guns, I don't know how many rapes occur in America every day, but it's more than one. You ask that person, that liberal progressive person, you ask them while they're being raped, whether or not they would like an armed citizen who's not a police officer to come in and prevent this, stop this right now. And I'll bet you every single one of them says, yes, please. Every single one of them says, yes, please. Because then it's not academic, then it's not posturing, then it's not moral superiority, then it's not a cocktail party discussion. Now you are being murdered, or you are being raped, or your loved one is in front of your eyes, and then you ask somebody if an armed private conservative citizen would come into this alleyway with his gun and could put an end to this right now. Would you want him to, or would you rather continue to be raped to death? I'll bet you there's not one single person who will say, no, I'm enjoying being killed here. I'm enjoying being violated. I'm going to stand up for my principles and just let this guy bash my head against the stones, and my kids too, in front of my eyes. See, this is really where you get to brass tacks, right? This is where you really understand what liberals are. They're debaters, and they're posers, and they're cowards, and they're all these things, and they like to tell you what they would do, but they wouldn't. There's not one of them that wouldn't want somebody to save their life if their life was under assault. And this is why we have to have these discussions at the point of contact. If a guy is coming down an alley to murder you, and he says, I'm going to bash your brains in, would you rather have a gun then, yes or no? Now, people in a cocktail party would say, never, I would rather die. You would rather die until it comes time to die, and then you wouldn't. And all these liberals who hate the military and despise the U.S. Marine Corps, I always think about this, all these cold pink lunatics were preventing people from signing up from the Marine Corps death machine. Fair enough. But if you find yourself in Cabo San Lucas one day on a lovely vacation out there whale watching, and you're suddenly abducted by Zetas, and they take a chainsaw and start taking the heads off of all of your friends from the community college in the art department, and they get to you, you start asking yourself whether or not you would want the U.S. Marine Corps to come in guns blazing and put an end to this. Yeah. Yeah, okay. See, that's the difference between Code Pink and me. I don't have a point where my philosophy changes. You understand? There's no point in my life where any amount of threat or anything happens or might change my philosophy. My philosophy stays consistent from waking up in a nice warm bed in Sherman Oaks to finding myself on my knees in an orange jumpsuit with a guy with a black ski mask and a knife in his hand. My philosophy doesn't change anywhere in between there. It's consistent all the way through because it's based on reality. I think we ought to kill that guy while I'm sleeping in Sherman Oaks, and I also think we ought to kill that guy while I'm on my knees in an orange jumpsuit. It doesn't change. I don't get to be one guy at a cocktail party and then suddenly become another guy when I'm about to have my neck sawed off. Because I can imagine things, you see. I can see what this would be like.